The Galactic Federation's grand arena was filled with the most elite warriors of the galaxy, each representing their species, each believing they were the pinnacle of survival. This was the Tor Survival Gauntlet, the deadliest competition ever designed, created to push even the strongest to their absolute limits. No species had ever completed it in less than 30 days. Some never completed it at all. The Federation called it the ultimate test of endurance, intelligence, and combat skill. It had brutal desert heat, freezing Arctic storms, poisonous swamps, and a jungle filled with creatures that could tear through armored tanks. Not to mention the death zone, where automated drones would relentlessly hunt competitors until they either escaped or perished. Every year, warriors trained for a lifetime to attempt the course, and even the best barely survived. As the gathered aliens flexed their muscles, showed off their weapons, and prepared for battle, the entire arena fell silent as an unexpected team stepped forward. Humans, a handful of them, dressed in simple gear, no advanced weapons, no fear in their eyes. The alien spectators laughed. Humans were a new species in the galactic scene, not yet feared, not yet proven. The Tor Gauntlet had crushed war-hardened species. What chance did these soft-skinned creatures have? The Federation official, a tall insectoid being with gleaming Ketan armor, stepped forward, looking down at the human team. "You understand that no one has ever finished this course in under a month?" he asked, his mandibles clicking in amusement. One of the humans, a woman with short-cut brown hair and a confident smirk, simply nodded. "Got it." Another human, a muscular man with a scar running down his cheek, cracked his knuckles. "How fast do we have to be to set a new record?" The crowd erupted into laughter. The very idea that humans thought they could break the course's record was ridiculous. The fastest finish had been 29 days, and that had been from a species bred for endurance. No one had ever completed it faster. The official chuckled darkly. "Survive first, human, then worry about records." The buzzer sounded, and the challenge began. Within moments, most species rushed forward, carefully planning their strategies. Some climbed rocky terrain to avoid the initial death traps. Others moved cautiously through dense fog to prevent ambushes. The humans, they sprinted forward like it was a morning jog. The alien observers frowned, confused by their approach. Why aren't they conserving energy? One whispered. Another, a reptilian competitor, scoffed. They'll burn out before they even reach the first obstacle. But the humans didn't slow down. As the competitors cautiously approached the flame chasm, a pit of molten rock that shot fire at random intervals, the humans didn't stop to analyze patterns or take measurements like the others. Instead, they simply ran full speed and jumped between safe zones with perfect timing. One of the observers, a cybernetic strategist, ran calculations. "That's not possible." They didn't even measure the fire cycles. The first human landed safely on the other side, grinning. Easy. The rest followed in perfect coordination, as if their instincts knew exactly when to move. The aliens were stunned. Had they practiced this course before? How were they this fast? The competitors moved forward, and the second stage began, a frozen wasteland with razor-sharp winds and sub-zero temperatures. Most species had specialized heat suits or thick fur to withstand the cold. The humans, they wrapped cloth around their faces, huddled together, and kept moving. They didn't stop, didn't rest, didn't complain. Where others slowed down and collapsed, humans seemed to get stronger. The Federation officials watching through surveillance feeds were baffled. What is this? They should be suffering from frostbite by now. The monitoring AI ran a biological analysis. The humans' core temperatures remained stable. Somehow, they were adapting. One of the alien competitors, shivering beneath layers of insulation, watched as a human pulled off their outer jacket and handed it to another teammate. How are they not cold?" The human just grinned. "We've been through worse." As the competition continued, it became clear the humans were not just surviving, they were thriving. While others hesitated before dangerous terrain, humans trusted their instincts and worked as a team. When faced with toxic swamps, other species carefully tested the water, analyzing acidity and checking for predators. The humans? They built rafts from whatever they could find and paddled across in minutes, even when faced with the infamous Predator's Canyon, where massive beasts stalked the weak. Other species avoided detection. The humans? They set traps. They studied the predators, lured them into choke points, and even used the terrain to hunt the creatures that were supposed to be hunting them. By the end of the first day, alien teams were still struggling through the first quarter of the course. The Federation's control room buzzed with uneasy whispers as the surveillance feed showed something unbelievable. The humans were already halfway through the gauntlet. The insectoid official who had mocked them earlier stared at the screen, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. This is not possible. No species moves this fast. The AI running the competition sent an urgent alert. Warning: course completion speed exceeding all expected parameters. Adjustments required. The Federation leaders exchanged nervous glances. If humans could adapt this quickly, what else were they capable of? And worse, what would they do if they ever saw the galaxy as a true battlefield? But the humans weren't thinking about that. As the sun set on the first day, they sat around a small fire, laughing, eating rations, and stretching their tired muscles. One of them grinned at the course ahead. "So, think we can finish this tomorrow?" Another chuckled, rubbing his sore shoulders. "Why not? Could be fun. No fear. No hesitation, only the hunger to push forward." The Federation had set the ultimate survival test, believing no one could ever master it. But they had forgotten one simple truth. For humans, survival wasn't a challenge. It was a way of life. The Galactic Federation's control room was in chaos. High-ranking officials, military strategists, and survival experts huddled around holographic displays, their faces twisted in disbelief. The Saltor survival gauntlet had existed for over 200 years, and in all that time, no species had ever completed it in under a month. And yet, in just one day, the humans had already crossed the halfway mark. This was impossible. The AI monitoring the course had sent multiple error alerts, recalibrating the difficulty settings, but the results remained the same. Humans weren't just surviving. They were thriving. Meanwhile, in the gauntlet itself, the alien competitors struggled. Many had barely made it past the first few zones. The harsh desert had drained their strength, the frozen tundra had nearly frozen them solid, and the toxic swamp had slowed them to a crawl. Some had already dropped out, their bodies unable to endure the unrelenting challenges. And yet, the humans moved as if they were built for this. On the Galactic Broadcast Network, the event was being live-streamed to trillions across the stars. Commentators from different species were arguing, trying to explain how these primitive newcomers were outpacing the galaxy's finest warriors. A reptilian warlord scoffed. "They must be cheating. There is no way a species without natural armor or claws can move this fast." A feline-like strategist shook her head, watching the replay of the humans crossing the flame chasm. "No, they are not cheating. They are just different." Back in the gauntlet, the humans had reached the dead zone, a massive ruin filled with automated defense drones, collapsing structures, and traps designed to test agility, combat reflexes, and endurance. Most species took days to navigate it, relying on stealth and careful planning. The humans, they ran straight in. The first wave of drones activated, unleashing a storm of plasma fire. The lead human, a man named Cole, shouted, "Split formation. Keep moving." The team scattered, ducking between cover, moving in unpredictable zigzag patterns. Where other species panicked and hesitated, the humans moved with purpose. They used the environment, running along walls, sliding under collapsed beams, and throwing debris to trigger traps ahead of them. One of the alien teams, still at the entrance, watched in horror as the humans moved through the gauntlet like trained predators. A four-armed avian competitor gulped. They're fighting the drones like it's a game. The Federation officials did not understand. The gauntlet was supposed to break competitors. It was designed to test survival under extreme stress. The fire chasms, the toxic swamps, the predatory jungles. Every part of it was meant to push warriors past their limits. But humans adapted. Where others hesitated, they took action. Where others feared, they analyzed. They weren't just surviving. They were learning. And then the unthinkable happened. A Federation official gasped. They're nearing the final stretch. The humans had blasted through the dead zone in record time. Not by brute force, but by reading the battlefield, working together, and outmaneuvering every obstacle thrown at them. The last section of the course, the Sky Spire, stood before them. A towering structure of shifting platforms, electrified walls, and wind tunnels that required precise movement to ascend. It had taken the strongest species in the galaxy at least a week to climb. The humans, they just grinned. One of them cracked their knuckles. All right, let's finish this. The entire galaxy watched in stunned silence. No one had ever conquered the Taltor Gauntlet in less than a month. And now, for the first time in history, the unthinkable was about to happen. And humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Federation's highest-ranking officials sat in stunned silence, their holographic screens displaying what should have been impossible. The humans weren't just passing the survival course. They were dismantling it. Every challenge, every obstacle that had broken elite warriors, they handled with precision, teamwork, and something no other species had ever shown: pure, relentless determination. The Sky Spire loomed ahead, a nightmare of shifting platforms, electrified walls, and high-speed wind tunnels that even the most agile species struggled to climb. It was designed to force competitors to retreat, to regroup, to struggle through days of exhaustion before even attempting an ascent. And yet, as the galactic audience watched in disbelief, the humans didn't hesitate. Cole, the leader of the human squad, studied the structure for less than a minute. His sharp blue eyes scanned every moving platform, every energy barrier, every hazard designed to test reflexes to their limit. Then, without a word, he leaped forward, grabbing onto the first platform without hesitation. The other humans followed instantly. No discussion, no doubts. Alien competitors still stuck at the dead zone stared in awe. A six-limbed Thren warrior, gasping for breath after barely surviving a drone attack, muttered, "Are they insane?" A feline-like Cathar soldier, nursing an injured arm, whispered, "No, they're just different." The humans moved like a unit, leaping from one unstable platform to another, adjusting midair, dodging energy bursts with reflexes so sharp it seemed as if they could see the future. The wind tunnels howled, strong enough to knock most species off balance. But the humans, they used them. Instead of resisting, they leaned into the wind, using it to propel their jumps higher, faster. A Federation analyst's voice trembled as he updated the records. The fastest completion of the Sky Spire was 12 days. His throat went dry. The humans have been climbing for 10 minutes. Gasps echoed across the control room. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was mastery. The final section of the Sky Spire was the most difficult. A gravity-fluctuating gauntlet that constantly shifted between near-zero gravity and crushing force levels. It required years of training to even attempt, and many warriors had failed, their bodies unable to adapt fast enough. And yet, the humans were laughing. As they reached the gravity field, Cole barked out, "All right, same as the drop training back home. Adjust midair, brace on impact, and don't stop moving." The others grinned, ready. Then they launched themselves into the madness. The first pulse hit, a sudden loss of gravity that sent them weightless. Most species would flail, panic, lose control. The humans, they tucked, twisted, and aimed themselves toward the next platform like they had done this 1,000 times before. The gravity snapped back, 10 times normal strength. The force should have slammed them down, crushed them into the surface. Instead, the humans had already braced. Their muscles tightened, their bodies adapted, and they moved like nothing had changed. The control room erupted into shouts. That's not possible. They're supposed to slow down, struggle to adjust. But humans did not slow down. They reached the final platform, a sheer vertical climb with no handholds, buffeted by hurricane-force winds. The final test, the final wall. The first human smirked. Looks like my rock climbing days are about to pay off. Another cracked his knuckles. Free solo, huh? Let's do this. And they climbed. No ropes, no hesitation, no fear. Every other species had needed advanced climbing gear to even attempt this final wall. The humans, they'd just used their hands, their raw strength, their willpower. The galactic audience sat in stunned silence as, before their very eyes, humanity did the impossible. They reached the top. They had conquered the toughest survival course in the galaxy, and they had done it in just one day. The moment the last human pulled himself over the final ledge, the galaxy changed. The control room, once filled with analysts shouting calculations, fell into absolute silence. The entire Galactic Federation, watching from every corner of space, from battle-hardened warriors to elite strategists, had their eyes locked onto the live feed. The humans had done the impossible. 7 figures stood at the top of the sky spire, breathing heavily but grinning like they had just finished a routine exercise. Their leader, Cole, stretched his arms, cracked his neck, and turned toward the nearest camera drone with a smirk. Well, that was fun. The statement sent shockwaves across the galaxy. This challenge was not supposed to be fun. It was supposed to break warriors, to push them to their absolute limits. It had crippled battle-tested veterans, destroyed the confidence of entire species, and served as a proving ground for only the greatest fighters in the universe. And the humans had laughed through it. The Federation High Council's private communication channels exploded with activity. This can't be real. What kind of species does that? They didn't even use advanced tech. No cybernetic enhancements, no genetic modifications, just their bodies, their minds. A representative of the Wylathan Empire, one of the most physically dominant races in the galaxy, leaned forward, their voice tight with disbelief. They didn't hesitate. That's the part that terrifies me. Even the strongest warriors doubt themselves in the final climb. But the humans? They moved without fear. A war strategist from the Zilith Dominion, a reptilian race known for their centuries of brutal warfare, exhaled slowly. If their soldiers are anything like these, we need to reconsider everything. The broadcast had reached nearly every major system. Across thousands of worlds, species who once dismissed humanity as a minor power now questioned everything they thought they knew. The humans weren't just strong. They were relentless, adaptive, fearless, and worst of all, they enjoyed the challenge. The alien competitors, still recovering from their own failures, stared at the screen in shock. A towering, 4-armed warrior from the Olnak Dominion clenched his fists. He had spent weeks preparing for the Sky Spire, training every muscle in his body, and he had still failed before reaching the halfway point. Yet these humans had casually climbed it in a single day. The Thrin warrior from earlier, now fully healed, shook his head in disbelief. They weren't just trying to survive. They were testing themselves, pushing their limits, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And that realization sent a chill through every species watching. What kind of warriors would fight, not out of desperation, but because they thrived under pressure? The Federation High Council had a difficult choice to make. Recognizing humanity's feat meant admitting that they had drastically underestimated the species. But ignoring it, that was even more dangerous. The head of the council, a wrinkled, wise elder from the Exenari race, finally spoke after a long silence. We must reassess humanity. We cannot afford to be wrong about them. His words carried across the entire galactic network. The meaning was clear. The galaxy had just witnessed something terrifying. Humans had conquered their toughest survival course in a single day. And now, every species had to ask themselves a single question. If humans could do this for fun, what could they do in war? The celebrations on Earth were wild. Across human colonies, military academies, and even the deep space mining stations, cheers erupted as the final results were confirmed. The Sky Spire, once thought to be an impossible challenge, had been conquered by a group of unmodified humans in a single day. The footage spread across every known communication network, looping on every alien world. The final moment, where Cole and his team stood at the peak, grinning like it had been just another workout, sent a ripple of unease through the galactic community. But while humanity celebrated, the rest of the galaxy wasn't cheering. Deep inside the Galactic Federation's council chambers, the top strategists, war leaders, and representatives of the most powerful species sat in grim silence. The room was filled with holographic projections, displaying the climb from every angle, analyzing every movement the humans had made, breaking down their reactions, their endurance, their unnatural ability to adapt to any situation. A towering Karath general, his scaled body tensed with frustration, growled, "This wasn't a victory. This was a warning." The head of the Federation's intelligence division, an aged Exenari with pale, translucent skin, exhaled slowly. "We were wrong about them. All of us. We believed that because they lacked advanced cybernetics or genetic enhancements, they were weaker. But it is the opposite. Their weakness is their greatest strength. They don't rely on technology. They rely on themselves." A silence followed his words. It was an uncomfortable truth, but no one could deny it. Humans, despite being considered a young and reckless species, had just done what no other species in the galaxy had accomplished. And they hadn't done it with precision-engineered biology, exoskeleton reinforcements, or AI-assisted reflexes. They had done it through sheer willpower. A war tactician from the Thalaxer Empire, a species known for their unshakable discipline, folded his arms. "I have studied countless battle strategies, countless wars fought between the stars. Every species, no matter how strong, has a breaking point. But these humans," he shook his head, "they don't break. They push forward. They learn. And that is what makes them terrifying." For the first time in galactic history, fear of humanity spread without a single shot being fired. The footage of the challenge was being dissected across every military academy in the galaxy. Elite warriors, who had once laughed at the idea of human soldiers standing against them, now watched and felt something they had never felt before: doubt. If humans could do this for sport, what could they do when their survival was on the line? The question lingered in every military strategist's mind. The Karath general finally stood up, his deep voice breaking the silence. "This changes everything. The next time we fight a war, we must ensure that humans are either with us," his reptilian eyes narrowed, "or not against us." And with that, the meeting ended. The galactic powers now understood a truth they had ignored for far too long. Humanity wasn't a species to underestimate. The footage of the human victory spread like wildfire across the galaxy. News networks, military analysts, and high-ranking officials of every major species were glued to their screens, watching in disbelief as the humans crushed every part of the Sky Spire's legendary course. The obstacles that had broken seasoned warriors, humans had laughed through them. The environmental hazards designed to push beings to their absolute limits, humans had adapted instantly. For species that had long considered themselves superior, this was a wake-up call. On the industrial world of Vakroth, a Xilari warlord watched the recordings, his multiple eyes narrowing as he replayed the moment when Cole and his team had reached the top. His people had trained for decades to master endurance. Their soldiers were bioengineered for survival. And yet, Unmodified humans had beaten their best without breaking a sweat. The warlord clenched his claws, his voice a low growl. If humans can do this for sport, how do they fight a real war? The same question echoed across military councils, war academies, and strategic planning centers in every galactic faction. For centuries, the Federation had ranked humanity as a Tier 3 combat species, not particularly weak, but not a major threat. Now that classification was under serious review. On the Central Federation capital, a council of top intelligence officers, generals, and high-ranking officials held an emergency meeting. The chamber was filled with murmurs, nervous whispers, and silent tension. The holographic screen flickered, showing data on human physiology, past battles, and now, most importantly, their unexpected performance in the Sky Spire. A cold silence followed. Then, Ambassador Calvas, a high-ranking strategist from the Ralzeri species, finally spoke. "We have miscalculated." The council turned their eyes to him. He gestured toward the screen, showing the slow-motion replay of humans sprinting through ice storms, climbing sheer rock faces without assistance, and pushing past the breaking points of every other species. His voice was sharp, filled with an emotion most Ralzeri never showed: concern. "We assumed their lack of genetic enhancements was a weakness. It is not. We assumed their reliance on crude technology made them inferior. It does not. What we have witnessed here is the foundation of something far more dangerous." A Xenari general, her metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the lights, leaned forward. "Elaborate." Calvas's expression darkened. "They do not stop. When others break, they push forward. They do not accept defeat, no matter how impossible the odds. And worst of all," he switched the screen to show close-up footage of the humans, their eyes burning with a primal, unstoppable determination. "They enjoy the struggle. It excites them." The room fell silent. For most species, hardship was something to endure. To humans, it was a challenge to overcome. And if they could find enjoyment in something as brutal as the Sky Spire, what did that mean for war? A Kirath commander, his voice low and uncertain, finally spoke. "Perhaps it is time we reconsider our policies regarding humans." No one argued, because at that moment, every species in the galaxy was realizing the same chilling truth. They had spent centuries overlooking humanity, dismissing them as an average, non-threatening species. Now, they were forced to ask themselves, had they just made a grave mistake? As the final echoes of the Sky Spire challenge faded, the galaxies stood in silent disbelief. The greatest survival test ever created, a challenge that had broken champions, had been defeated in a single day by humans. What was supposed to be a trial of pure endurance had become something else entirely. It was a warning. On the Federation homeworld, the High Council chambers were in chaos. Ambassadors, generals, and intelligence officers from all across the stars debated furiously. Every species that had once dismissed humanity as unremarkable now saw them through a new lens, as something terrifyingly different. They weren't supposed to survive. A Xilari strategist growled, his reptilian tail twitching in agitation. They were supposed to struggle, to break. Instead, they thrived. A Ralzeri intelligence officer leaned forward, his claws tapping against the table. "We calculated human limits based on standard physiology. We did not account for their minds." His expression darkened. "We failed to understand their psychology." That was the true horror of humanity. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the fastest. They didn't have natural armor, venom, or genetic enhancements like other species. But they had something worse. They refused to quit. Every challenge, every setback, every moment where others would have given up, humans saw it as a challenge to overcome. When they should have surrendered, they pushed harder. When they should have collapsed, they kept going. And when they won, they smiled. The footage of Cole and his team standing at the top of the Sky Spire, battered but grinning, played across thousands of screens in military war rooms. Humans had conquered the impossible, and they had enjoyed it. That unsettled the galaxy more than anything else. For centuries, war strategists had categorized species based on combat effectiveness. The Gatheri were the strongest, with their massive war beasts and brute force. The Exilari were the most disciplined, training from birth to master every form of warfare. The Ralzeri were the smartest, using strategy and technology to outmaneuver their enemies. But humans? Humans had been labeled as mid-tier. Now that ranking was under serious reconsideration. The Exilari general, a veteran of countless battles, narrowed his yellow eyes. If humans can survive this test for sport, what does that mean for war? No one spoke, because they all knew the answer. It meant that if humans ever went to war, they wouldn't stop. No matter how brutal, no matter how impossible the odds, they would keep fighting. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt fear. Because now, every species had to ask themselves one terrifying question. Had they underestimated humanity for far too long?